I extend my sincere gratitude to all of us gathered here today to convene this important press conference organized by the Ministry of Justice. As a spokesperson for the Police Force of St. Martin, it's important that we, as a ministry, address the matter that holds eminent significance, not just for law enforcement, but for the entire community, also in particular when it comes to youth. As we encounter challenges during certain events, including the jump up, we want to reflect on shared responsibilities, safety for all, including the youth and the teenagers. This responsibility extends as far from beyond the police force. It encompasses our entire community. The events of the weekend past cast a spotlight on critical importance, guiding our youth toward responsible behavior, especially concerning the use of alcohol and drugs. It is incumbent upon us to collectively create an environment where young individuals are empowered. In addressing these concerns, we also acknowledge the allegations of ill treatment that are accusations being used, upholding the law, ensuring rights of every individual are committed that require the involvement of the entire community. Allegation of misconduct demands investigation and accountability, and it's our shared duty to hold up these principles. Beyond conflict, our community faces a myriad of challenges. These situations raise and call for collective introspective and actions, reminding us that our interactions with the youth, the younger generation, shape the perceptions of authority and their role within our society. As a united community, we must instill in them the importance of respect, empathy, understanding, while fostering an environment where there is growth. This growth is nurtured. The communal responsibility is underscored by the broad array of concerns voiced by the public concerning the police operations. But it's only through dialogue, collaboration, mutual understanding that we can ensure well-being of our citizens. We are committed to actively engage with our community to address the concerns, improve trust, collaborate on meaningful solutions. With this being said, in conclusion, I extend a heart gratitude to all who's here, and thanks to the Minister of Justice providing us this platform to all who gave us our chance to explain from the police point of view. With this, I'll pass over the word to the Minister.
Yes, I believe it was imperative that we call this conference today because there is a lot of speculation, a lot of communication going back and forth about recent events that surrounds Kpsm as well as our youth in the community and decisions that are made within the ministry. For that reason, I thought it would be wise if we were to hold this press conference, giving the media an opportunity in representation of the public to ask any questions of concern so we can thoroughly address those as much as possible. I would, of course, beforehand, and I'm sure the chief is going to stress on this, there are certain things or certain information that can be given and some that cannot due to, of course, not wanting to negatively affect any sort of investigations that are underway. But I do believe that when it comes to, and let me also mention that who's not here with us just yet, that I also invited was Dr. Thomas from Turning Point. I believe that she has quite a depth of information to provide in response to the trend that we see happening quite extensively with our youth in terms of their abuse of substances within the community, and I think that needs to be addressed. I will have some more to add to that after she speaks. I hope she's able to make it with us. If not, I'll touch on it as much as possible. But without further ado, I'd like to give Chief John an opportunity if he has any opening statements, and then we would like to pass it over to the press for your questions.
I don't really have much opening statements. I think Mr. Yosefa said very extensive, very much what we want to say this afternoon. Basically, we're really open for the questions, your concerns, and as transparent as possible, we like to try to give, where we can, explanation on certain investigations that are ongoing. And there I must emphasize indeed that when I say where we can, it's to protect also the privacy of all, even the victims.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chief John and Josefa. Good afternoon. As you know, I'm the one that broke the story with the allegations of ill treatment. I posted some photo. Like to let you know, I also saw some videos that what took place in the nightclub. But there are questions surrounding the arrest. There are at least 4 witnesses that we have that have seen what transpired at the residence in South Reward. Based on this situation at the nightclub, which I know police is aware of, why didn't the police arrest this individual at the nightclub where the incident took place? And why was it necessary for a hit and run? Minister Josefa, I know you have told me this several times when I ask about hit and run accident, people driving without insurances, hit other people's vehicle, they're not being compensated for damages. You always said that those are civil cases. What's the difference in this case to arrest somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning? They have severe injuries, whether it's by police, whether during the fight, wherever this person received the injuries. Why not take the person to the hospital? Why have this person in a police cell? Are we looking for another case of Mr. Lance Thomas? These are my concerns. I don't want to know about the investigation. I want to know about the steps taken that night.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw, for the questions, and I do agree with you. At this phase, it's better not to go into the specifics of the investigation. I think one of your questions that you refer to of why not arresting the person earlier, there's also reasons for that when we go into the details of the investigation. You also spoke about why making the arrest at where it was made. I want to be very careful with what I say about this because it's discretion of each officer how they proceed when they're doing their job. So they, according to them, was sufficient reasons for doing the arrest there. After being arrested, like any other citizen, you're brought to the police station. There, the acting prosecutor will actually do an assessment of was the law correctly applied in your arrest. And in that phase, the acting prosecutor also going into it, saw the injuries and also indicated to the person, and the ambulance was even called to the station, but the person denied medical help from ambulance or whoever. So, and that's a normal procedure. Whoever comes to the police station, one of the things the acting prosecutor have to do is to check if there are any injuries. If there are injuries, it's normal procedure that you get medical attention. Even before putting you into a cell, it's required now, and I must say, as an implementation after the report of the CPT of the cells, it's required now that before we can put you into a cell, we have to call a doctor. You have to be checked to go into the police cells. So, according to the procedures, all of that was followed. We can backtrace that in our preliminary investigation that we have done in this case. And the facts are also on paper. The gentleman just denied to receive medical attention at the moment.
Chief John, you're saying that the person denied medical attention prior to being incarcerated. Was ambulance had to be called at 11 a.m. or later that day when the person was released? My question also for the arrest, you arrest at 3 a.m. Why then release during the day, the same day? Wasn't the reasons for the arrest sufficient to keep the person behind bars?
The reasons for the arrest was indeed sufficient to keep the person behind bars. But there is also within our system that if the investigation at that moment no more warrants that the person stays incarcerated, they're released after the statement. In this case, the gentleman really could have been spoken to, interrogated in the morning, indeed, not before that.
Good afternoon, Minister of Justice, Chief of Police, Officer Josefa, Ms. Mako. Stemming from the Dutch Antilles, there is a national ordinance establishing a committee to examine the police brutality. This was announced by the Minister of Justice a couple of years ago. Recently, there were complaints filed with police about a police officer kicking a person in the head, another police officer kicking a man in the police station, and a woman having to undress in front of a police officer while she had her period. And these complaints were filed with police, but they were directed to you, Chief of Police, Mr. John. And they were handled by internal affairs. Why are these complaints not handled by the committee, and how can persons in the community file a complaint against police with the committee?
With regards to the other cases, what we try to do is persons have an option. If you go to internal affairs, your application or your complaint rather is processed there. The report is then given to the chief of police, who then has the ability to determine if there are any consequences that would happen. I, as minister, could request to receive that report as well. I can't say that I have received the reports that you are referring to. But when it comes to the complaint committee, that is an external body, they do and have received complaints, which they have reviewed. I have received updates from them. I can't list for you off the top of my head what those recommendations have been, but the complaint committee is handling matters. The particular cases you're referring to, I can't say that they have been referred to that committee in terms of the need or seeing the need for that. And we can't also forget the fact that we have our national detectives. So in the event that it is proven something has been done that is extraordinary or misconduct, it can be also escalated to our national detectives for further investigation and handling.
When someone does a complaint by the internal affairs, if it deemed to be something what we call strafrechtelijk, penal, that case is referred to the public prosecutor. The public prosecutor, in conjunction with the prosecutor general, then gives the national detectives referral to have to deal with that case. So the structure is, as soon as we do a preliminary investigation and we notice that it's penal, the internal affairs no more deals with this. Speaking about the complaints committee, we have been working along with them. They are allowed to view all documentation. They are allowed to have insight in all internal investigations. And they have been doing their job, I must say, to our satisfaction also. In investigations, it can happen that it comes out two sides. So maybe we did something beyond our reach, or it also can show clearly that officers follow the procedures and did the required.
Can you please explain who is on the committee, the 6 members, and what cases they have handled?
We don't have those names at this time to share with you.
Isn't that public knowledge?
Yeah, sure, it can be public knowledge. I just don't have the names with me to share with you at this time.
A press release was issued over the weekend. My question is general. Whosoever wants to answer can go ahead. The press release states that the person opted to at least press or file a complaint with the national detective. Has that person decided to file such a complaint? And if yes, have you received any information as it pertains to this complaint?
Actually, I was informed by the national detectives before I came here that there were no complaint filed as yet by them. So, like I stated in our press release, we are very transparent about what happened in the case of the pictures. We will give all material and all facts from our internal investigation to the national detectives, but as yet the person has not filed a complaint. That does not stop our internal investigation, so we are still ongoing with the internal investigation. And to be very clear and open to everyone within this community, if there's misconduct by any officer, our expectations are that you do file a complaint. Our expectations are not that things have to be swept under the rug. When I see the photos, for instance, when I saw them the first time, I was like, that is surprising. It's excessive. But it's an investigation that brings out other facts. And that's why we're very interested for the complaint to be done. And the part with the police, it is clear for us. I just want to give a hint of if it was a clear case where this officer went so far, he would have been suspended the same day. But there is facts. There is other facts in this investigation, and that's why we're really asking for everyone to please. I've been hearing people are telling me that on social media there are even marches will be organized, etc. We really want marches to be organized for the use of force that happens within our community, not only by police officers, by anyone. We want marches to be organized. We want the whole community to be involved in the fact that we use too much force against each other. But in this case, the investigation, the facts should speak about the conclusion of the investigation.
If I may ask you straightforward, Chief, was it at any time that any of your officers were involved with any sort of abuse of this individual?
The gentleman was arrested by the officers, and to be honest, some kind of force was used there. The question is, was it excessive? The question is, was it unlawful? And those are the questions that we are trying to answer now with the investigation that we are doing internally.
Good afternoon to the Minister and also to the Chief of Police. As far as results, because most of the time when these investigations happen, you hear that an investigation goes on and then it goes on to the next time that there is some type of allegation of police brutality. Is there a system, Minister, maybe you can chime in as to at least to give the community the results of the investigation without hampering the individuals, so that at least they know that the case is closed and this is the outcome, because it looks bad also for the officers and it looks bad also for the person involved.
I think that whilst I respect the process of procedure and protecting the information, I have a responsibility to also protect the image of this ministry and the agencies within. There's a lot of misconceptions that are there as well. And so when we start to see social media and persons having their own personal opinion, and then persons are jumping on, so to speak, the bandwagon of the information, not having all the facts, it skews the perception of the hard work that law enforcement does. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't instances where officers misstep or have gone beyond and those missteps needs to be addressed. And then I seek for Chief to be able to do that, and we do those together when necessary. I do agree with you that the reporting of conclusion of cases are not necessarily publicized, and that is something I guess we have to get into a rhythm. And I'd like to be able to see that. I'd like for our agencies to put out the conclusion so that the public and those who are waiting to know what the status of the matter is can be aware. The thing is, in operations, every day there is mounting of incidents that take place, so they go from one to the next to the next. And sometimes once a case is solved, it's like it's solved, it's done, we're moving on. But we do have to bring a rhythm where we are bringing conclusion to the public as well, and it's something that I'm going to look into further with all agencies to be able to do so in the future.
Indeed, it's good to inform the public of the outcome of certain investigations. But I also understand the privacy, for instance, of a victim. And that's why we are very careful on how we bring out information.
If I may, Chief, as far as the stain on the reputation of the, let's say, for example, of the officer, so an allegation is brought against the officer, social media takes no account into the privacy of the officer and his family or her family, and then it goes out.
If it is not negative and stained, it's not shared. When positive information is provided, so let's say, for example, an officer is exonerated from a situation, no one shares that. No one uses the same energy of putting out the negative press to confirm and let everyone know that, okay, so after the investigation, it was proven that what was assumed to be the circumstances entirely was not. So I'd like to be able to see that the same energy that is applied to spreading the negative or what is assumed as a fault on the ministry or the agency, when the correct information or the truth comes out, that it is also shared as well.
You're saying the 4 officers that were involved or allegedly involved in the arrest, have any of them been suspended today or sent home of leave of absence pending the investigation? And can you tell us if the attorney representing the victim, even though official complaint have not been filed with the national detectives, have the police been in contact with the attorney?
None of the 4 officers, and I want to say it a bit different than you said, none of the 4 officers that was at the scene are suspended. So there were even more than 4 officers at the scene. There were traffic officers, there were officers who transported the person to the station, and there were officers who made the arrest. So it was not in the sequence of 4 officers making an arrest. We had contact with the victim and the family, etc., to proceed to see if they wanted to file the complaint by the Internal Affairs. And they informed us that they prefer to do it on advice of their legal, to do it at the National Detectives, which we also applaud, because the truth have to come out, and we want to come to a conclusion as soon as possible. Indeed, this was a bad look. A bad look in the sense of, I don't know if it's public knowledge, but our officers are required to train 4 times a year in use of force, and 4 times a year making an exam. That's a heavy investment that we do for the officers. Yes, it can go wrong, but we are trying to do it as professional as possible. And when I see those photos, if it was done by the officers, that was wrong. But like I said, I'm hinting again, it's not a clear cut that all of this happened during the arrest.
In St. Martin, going to the court is only possible for people who have the money to do so. Justice is not attainable for people that don't have the money to pay griffierechten, $500, and then a lawyer. In this case, the lawyer offered to handle the case for free. So there's very few lawyers that do that. and this lawyer has gone off island. So my question is, if people are not satisfied with the way the police handled the complaint internally, what can they then do if they don't have the money to go to court?
Right. So in reference to the same committee that you mentioned, they can visit the Ministry of Justice .sx website. And on the website, it has the way that you can contact the police complaint committee to be able to have that case reviewed there. And indeed, if it is a case that they're not pleased with the outcome, then yes, they can take it to court. Now, in terms of covering the fees for that, that is not a budget per se that the ministry has, or we have, I don't know if the through VSA, they should be able to see if the yellow card can assist them there.
Minister, the issue of underage drinking is at the forefront once again. We saw what happened during the recent held issue of a morning. The police again is being blamed for not having done enough to at least curb the problem as it was occurring. What's your reaction based on the information?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. So a couple of things play a role here. One is we would hear that the Prime Minister, for example, reiterates that by law, it states that children under the age of 16 should not be in public, I'm sorry, how you call this, adult-like setting events, right? And in my opinion, we can justify that that, you know, Juve and these types, unless it's like children parade and it's fit for children, but these types of events is usually for adults. We see that the actions of the kids are participating in these events comes along with them feeling the need to be intoxicated like an adult would do. I do strongly believe that we have to also recognize the responsibility and discretion of a parent to decide whether or not their child should be a part of such an event. Yes? That aspect needs to be there, and so it cannot be solely on government to bring a management to that. Enforcement can do where, okay, if you're too young, you shouldn't be, but we will have to make a collective decision on that and how we are going to deal with it going forward. That is a hefty task to place on Kpsm because I myself attended to see what that Juve would look like, and there were a lot of children, honestly speaking. So to put that burden, so to speak, or that task, I should say, on Kpsm to have to cipher out or shift out children out of it is a lot. So we really rely on parents to do their part. But I think that it's important for Turning Point, Dr. Thomas, to be able to give us some insight about what they are seeing, how they have been dealing with it, and what is in the pipeline to be able to work as a organization that's a part of the Ministry of Justice to address this.
So it's been, like, I will say over the past 2 years, we've noticed an increase in substance use where our students are concerned. We saw it before, but it has gotten worse over the last 2 years. So as Turning Point, what we did in collaboration with the Ministry of Justice is we came up with different programs. So we wanted to go into the schools a while ago. That did not happen as planned for different reasons that I'm not going to go into right now. But we plan this year, moving forward, to really start a campaign on alcohol, but also substance. So when we say substance, a lot of us think that our students are only smoking marijuana or drinking alcohol. No, we're faced where our students are using cocaine, our students are popping pills. So the behavior that the teachers are gonna come across is unfair to them because the teachers as well are not trained for this. They're trained to come to work and teach our children, but now they have to deal with students coming to school under the influence of drug. So as Turning Point, what we did as well is that we create some materials where we go into the school, and then we also sit with not only the students, but we sit with the staff, the guidance counselors, and the teachers, so we can also educate them on what to look for. There is different behaviors that is associated with different drugs. So we're really starting a full force campaign with the Ministry of Justice when it comes on the substance, the drugs that are on St. Martin. And we have a new drug on the market, I spoke about it already, that has taken over the fentanyl. And with that drugs, we're seeing some behaviors that are very alarming. Yeah.
We put out a press release that covered the event and planning seminar that we had just last week, and then there's a part 2 coming. That was a well-attended information session. There was great information that was delivered by the various agencies within the ministry. The organizers and promoters that were in attendance would like to be able to have an opportunity to review the event policy that the Ministry of Justice is busy with, and elements of what you just mentioned are a part of that. So no, not per se was a discussion held with the organizers before, but stemming out of a lot of reactions that were coming because of the date that the organizers chose, etc. The ministry is really trying to streamline the process in which applications for permits are submitted in a timely manner, that more opportunity is given to our organizations to thoroughly be able to review the type of event, the dates they want to have it, how many events will be taking place on a specific date, because it's quite a weight on, again, Kpsm to be able to do so many either back-to-back or multiple events on the same day. So we are trying to structure event planning and permit issuance going forward. Even the request for visa waivers. As minister, I made a decision that visa waivers are going to be reserved for emergency purposes. You can't be planning an event, right? Booking an artist, booking a conference, but the last thing you think about with persons who have to come is the fact that they need a visa because of where they're coming from into St. Martin, and then seek for the minister to give an exception. No, an exception for a visa waiver is granted for unplanned or emergency circumstances, a funeral, medical, etc. And that is the message that we want to get out there. Again, I reiterate the fact that we also need our parents to play the role that they are supposed to in terms of having the discretion and the responsibility as whether their child or children should be participating in certain events. But to answer your question, the efforts that we have underway at the moment with our first seminar for event and promoters, a second one is coming up, but this is exactly what we're working towards, to be able to have that communication line happening so that proper planning will prevent poor performance. There you go. Thanks. Sorry, I have to wrap up. So Andrew, you were the last question. Dcomm is, but if I give you one more, it will open round 3. I'm so sorry. Okay. Can you send it to us in writing, BB? I think it's necessary. Okay. Okay. All right. So I'll allow this one last question, but it really ends with BB.
All right, thank
So
you,
we
Minister.
call it a follow-up.
Thank you so much. When the permit was issued for this particular Juve, were there conditions to the permit? For example, the police just said it, Dr. Thomas just said it. For the last 2 years, we have seen an excessive amount of drug abuse and alcohol abuse among our children. Were there conditions in this permit to stop a certain age limit from participating in the Juve morning? And at the same time, has the ministry start coordinating with the Ministry of Education to have, for example, Dr. Thomas in the schools?
Yes, that's what Dr. Thomas just mentioned. It took some time to be able to have that happen, and I'm not sure if that is because of the ministry itself, the Ministry of Education itself, or it comes from having to have discussions with boards, because school boards play a role in whether or not they will permit the invitation of an external institution to bring certain information. I am hoping, or not actually hoping, we have had our discussions that we're not going to wait any longer for the ability to campaign and educate within the schools. We're going public with this because the awareness needs to be on a public level. I'm sure sitting here today, hearing Dr. Thomas talk about the various types of drugs and behaviors that come out of it is information that was not or is not thoroughly aware are known to the public. We want to bring that to the forefront. This is an intense discussion that I've been having with Dr. Thomas. I have also asked her to have communications with our youth department. I've had this conversation with Chief John as well. Once upon a time, we had the DARE program. I'm seeking for that to come back. And so the Ministry of Justice is going to be doing all efforts. Again, though, BB, I recognize that the Ministry of Justice is seen as the ministry to receive all, do all, have all, and place all in its proper order. There are elements and levels and other entities that have responsibilities as well in the forefront. The Ministry of Justice is the last stop, but we are often seen as the institution that has to do everything. No, the permit did not have that in it, but the moment that you're going to put certain things into a written form and make it, so to speak, legal, then the question becomes, what is your legal basis for doing it? Now, we can refer to the law, but we have to also ensure that going forward, we have a policy in place that we can reference to. Hence the fact that we are focusing on getting this policy published soonest to address just that. Yes, thank you. Good. So with that, I'd like to be able to thank Chief John, Dr. Thomas, Josefa, and also to our rear, we also have the support of our acting SG, Ms. Florence Marlin. I want to thank Tiffany for organizing this and also carrying our live, and to Dcomm, as well as to you, the press, that you reacted so quickly to our invitation for this opportunity. I want to assure the public that the Ministry of Justice, under my leadership and all my department heads, we're doing our utmost best to be able to do things accordingly to what the law says, of course, keeping the community in mind and at the forefront at all times. So we do apologize for any inconvenience that we have caused, but we would appreciate if the public can give us the fair opportunity to allow proper process to be executed so that we can bring accurate information and service to the community of St. Martin. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and for being here. Thank you.